Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Marie Holiday, and today is Thursday, November the 5th, 2020. And I hope everybody had a fabulous day today. Before we get started, I just want to remind my viewers and my potential subscribers to subscribe to my channel, support my channel. Nothing would be possible without my viewers and subscribers. So with that being said, let's get down to the next lecture. I want to spend some time talking about what is the disease of addiction, aka your body on alcohol and other drugs. What is the disease of addiction, aka your body on alcohol and other drugs? I just want to remind the audience that I am an expert in the field of addiction. I'm credentialed in 3 different states. My specialty, I treat people with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, gambling addiction. I actually supervise other credentialed experts in the field. I've been in the field for over 20 years, so I'm bringing a wealth of knowledge plus the credential behind what I'm about to present. I just want to remind the audience that with these lecture series you're getting information at graduate degree level, broken down in everyday language. Because when I do lectures in other states, in different facilities, when I'm training people, they got to pay money. So you're getting something free that would typically cost in any other platform money to get this information. So I hope in knowing that, what I'm asking the audience to do is to pass this information forward to someone who may need this information or who may be suffering from the disease of addiction. So you got to pass it forward. So I want to spend some time, before I go into the science of addiction, I have got to first talk about and describe the pleasure pathway. And I'm going to break this down so simple, you're going to really be able to understand what I'm talking about. And I want to talk first about the pleasure pathway. Basically, in explaining that, what happens to our body when you are addicted? And when I say addicted, I'm talking about addicted to alcohol and drugs. To alcohol and drugs. While the process is complicated, but I'm not going to take it complex, I'm going to just break it down. And that complication ties into the biology, the genetics, play a role in whether or not a person is going to become addicted. Social factors, meaning environment, also plays a role. And the psychological, mental factors also play a role. So all of those different factors that play a role is what ties into the science behind it. There's the science behind biology, there's science behind social factors, and there's science behind the psychological factors. The basic idea are simple to understand. First of all, your brain uses chemicals and electrical energy to send and receive messages to and from the rest of your body, such as pain, temperature, danger, hunger are examples of this. When your stomach is empty, your brain gets a signal that your body needs food. A message is sent to your stomach to feel hungry. The body functions like breathing and heartbeat are controlled by certain areas of the brain. Other parts of the brain respond to pain or pleasure. Here's how all of this works, because I got to get the audience to understand the pleasure pathway before I even connect it and link it to addiction. Most of our good feelings come from an area in the brain known as the pleasure pathway. When something good happens to you, your brain makes chemicals that make you feel happy naturally. Similar to if you attend your child's graduation, or if you attend your child's school event, or if you get a raise, or if you fall in love, the brain will naturally produce feel-good chemicals naturally. similar to, like I said, the pleasure pathway. The pleasure pathway, that's all happen naturally in the brain. Natural feel-good chemicals when positive things are going on in our life. The pleasure pathway is also where drugs like alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, all other drugs affect the brain. They give you an extra burst or pleasurable feelings. However, these feelings do not last long. The natural level of your brain's own chemicals for making you feel happy drop when these mood changing chemicals leave your body. Alcohol and drugs it changes the brain chemistry. So the natural level of your brain's own chemicals for making you feel happy drop when these mood changing chemicals leave your body. And then you feel uncomfortable, sad, depressed, or nervous. During withdrawal, the more alcohol or drugs you have been using, the worse you may feel when the body experiences varying degrees of withdrawal. Basically, your body is reacting to not having its alcohol or drugs. Because when people use excessive alcohol and drugs, and as the alcohol or drugs leaves the body over time, the person can begin to feel either no withdrawal or mild withdrawal. Example of mild withdrawal could be irritability, problems concentrating, nausea. So what they do is replenish the body with more alcohol or drugs to relieve those symptoms of irritability. So during withdrawal, the more alcohol or drug you have been using, the worse you feel. Your body is reacting to not having its alcohol or drugs. You don't like this feeling, so you may take more and more of the alcohol or drugs to get high or drunk in order to feel better. That's what a lot of people do. It's just like a vicious cycle. So they need more and more and more of the alcohol or drugs just to feel okay, just to feel normal, in order to be able to function. So when that happens, when a person has to use excessive amounts of alcohol and drugs, more and more and more, just to feel normal, just to feel okay, just to be able to function, to get up in the morning, get going throughout the day, to make it through the day, that's an indication where the brain and body are now addicted to this level of alcohol or drugs in order to function. That's a clear description of addiction. When you're talking about the brain and the body is now dependent upon the alcohol or drug in order to function. So getting alcohol and drugs to feel normal becomes the most important thing in the person's life. More important than health, family, career, job, all of that. So I had to give a very good description so the audience can understand that pleasure pathway and understand how when the body and the brain becomes it needs the alcohol or drug in order to function, that's a strong indication of addiction. So now I'm going to introduce, when that has occurred, I'm now going to introduce the addicted brain. The brain now has become accustomed to having these substances in order to feel normal. The addicted brain. First of all, the brains of addicted people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs are different from the brains of people who are not addicted to alcohol or drugs. Drugs such as alcohol, cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, nicotine, yeah, nicotine's a drug, caffeine's a drug, opiates affect addicted people differently. They even do scans of the brain in the field of in addiction, and it would in addicted brain does not look the same as a non-addicted brain. So people who are not addicted to alcohol or drugs do not experience the intense high that addicts love so much. At some point in the addict's history of drinking or using, a change takes place in the person's brain. This change makes the addict want to use more and more and more of the alcohol or drugs despite knowing the negative consequences. Because this actually what's happening has occurred is change in the brain chemistry over time. So once the change happens in your body and brain to make the addict, once the change happens in your body and brain to make you addicted to alcohol or drugs, your only choice at this point is abstinence and recovery. You would no longer have the choice of just having one drink or one use of drugs once that body and brain now is relied upon excessive alcohol use in order to function, in order to get up in the morning, in order to make it through the day. If you got a job at this point, don't think you're working at 8-10 hours on a job and ain't sneaking in the restroom to consume more of the substance. When the user restarts again or relapse, say for example, if a person's in recovery, I don't care if they've been in recovery for 6 days or 6 months or 6 years or 20 years, when they relapse, the cycle begins all over again at the high amount of the excessive and alcohol or drug use. Whatever high amount that they stopped at prior to going into recovery, what happens when they relapse, they pick back up literally where they stopped off at and escalate to the point of catastrophic damage in terms of their addiction. Also, what we see in addiction is loss of control. And what loss of control is the user has no internal mechanism to say enough is enough. A person who's not addicted to alcohol or drugs, they can maybe have 1 or 2 drinks and walk away. Or if they're using drugs, they can probably every now and then use a little bit of drugs and might not use any more for 5-10 years. But a true addicted person, they're not going to be able to have 1 or 2 drinks or a little bit of drug use, because when they that one time will release their addiction all over again, and it's going to come with vengeance. So in the field of addiction, there are 3 main parts that makes up the disease of addiction. Number 1, preoccupation. Number 2, loss of control. And number 3, relapse. And preoccupation is like mental obsession that ties into the thoughts. A mental obsession, the person may tell themselves they have very good intention of going home when they get off work, but because they're so preoccupied with feeding their addiction, sometimes they may end up at the bar or end up at the dope house when they had every good intention of going home, but somehow because that preoccupation drives that use, it feeds that addiction. Another example of preoccupation is a person can be at a family event. Physically they're there, but mentally their mind is on the steps that they got to go through to feed that addiction. So that's one major part of that characterize the disease of addiction is preoccupation, and then we have loss of control. Loss of control is the person may start out using a little bit of drugs or 1 drink, but once they use that little bit, it releases that addiction all over again. It's as if they have no internal mechanism to say enough is enough. And then relapse is when the person has returned to old behavior. They're no longer in the maintenance phase. They're no longer in the healthy lifestyle. They have returned to old people, places, and things. Their use has escalated, and now they're in full-blown addiction. So when the user relapses, the cycle begins again. The preoccupation, the loss of control, which drives the addiction. This is how we know that addiction is a disease in the discipline I work in. Once the chemistry of addiction takes place, that's critical. Once the chemistry of addiction takes place, it can never be cured, but it can be stopped by not using alcohol or drugs and having a good recovery program and support system. Similar to when a person is diagnosed with diabetes. You know, they can do everything they're supposed to do to keep their diabetes under control, change what they eat, change their lifestyle, but that don't mean that, and they're doing good, their blood sugar looking good. It don't matter if that blood sugar looking good, they still got diabetes, and they got to maintain their healthy lifestyle. Similar to the disease of addiction, it don't matter if they're in recovery and doing good, because what has occurred with the brain chemistry changes in the body and brain because of that process that has taken place that ties into the science of addiction. Then that person can no longer return to using it again because the body is not going to recognize just one drink or a little bit of drug use because of the changing in the brain and body. So this is one of the main causes of relapse, I'm here to tell you, after a person has not used in a while, because they begin to feel healthy, they begin to look or feel good, and they begin to think that they're cured. And then they tell themselves, I can handle just that one drink, a small amount of drug use. But in reality, when you really take a really good look at on what has occurred, changes in the brain and body behind this. And that's why they got to stay in maintenance phase of recovery. So that is why in the field of addiction we call it a disease, because changes in the brain chemistry, the brain now in the body has now become to need this substance in order to function. So that is why they call it the disease of addiction, aka the body and the brain has now become to need the alcohol or drugs. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all got a lot out of this. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and I will see you all again soon. Simplified. Have a great evening.